Hey Reddit, my name is Emily, and I'm about to tell you a story that started as an ordinary day, but ended, well, let's just say, very differently. This isn't the kind of story I usually share, but damn, it's too weird to keep to myself. So here we go. It happened last Friday. I work in one of those glass skyscrapers downtown where elevators are like their own little universe. They either work flawlessly or break down at the worst possible moment. Guess what happened this time? Yep, exactly that. I stepped into the elevator after a long day at work. It was around 8 p.m., and I was already dreaming about a hot bath and a glass of wine. There was already a guy inside, tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that clearly cost more than my monthly salary. He looked tired, but he still carried himself with that kind of confidence that makes you think he's either a CEO or just really good at pretending to be one. We exchanged polite nods, and the elevator started going down. And then, bam! The elevator jerked and stopped. The lights flickered and went out. We were stuck. At first, I thought it was a joke. Like in those movies where everything gets resolved in 5 minutes and everyone laughs about it. But no, the elevator didn't move. We pressed the call button, but there was no response. Apparently, the technician had already gone home, and security probably assumed it was just a minor glitch. For the first few minutes, we sat in silence. Then he introduced himself. Jake, I said. Emily? We tried joking around to ease the tension, but the unease kept growing. The darkness, the tight space, and that strange elevator smell that always seems just a little suspicious. And then I noticed the way he looked at me, not like a coworker or a stranger. It was a look that said, "Shit, we might be here for a while, and I have no idea what to do." I felt my heartbeat quicken. I wasn't sure if it was fear, stress, or something else, but something about this situation made me feel strange. We started talking about work, about life, about how we both hated elevators. He told me he had a similar experience last year, but back then, he was alone. At least you make it more entertaining, he said with a smile. I laughed, but inside, something clicked. And that's when things got interesting. We were sitting on the elevator floor when he suddenly said, Emily, have you ever done something so crazy that afterward you couldn't believe it actually happened? I looked at him and realized that this elevator wasn't just a coincidence. This was a moment that was going to change everything. But more on that in the next part. I looked at him, or at least in the direction where I assumed he was, because it was so dark in the elevator that I could only make out his silhouette. Well, I said, if you don't count the fact that I'm currently stuck in an elevator with a stranger, then no, I haven't. He laughed. It was a nice laugh, deep, a little husky, like someone who smoked a lot in college but quit because it didn't fit his image. Well, maybe now's the time to start, he said, and I felt something inside me tighten. We kept talking. Turns out, he worked in the same building but on a different floor. He was a financial analyst. I was in marketing. We both hated corporate parties and loved coffee more than was probably healthy. It felt like we had something in common, but at the same time, he was different, not like the guys I usually talk to. He was confident but not arrogant, funny but not childish, and damn, he knew how to listen. Meanwhile, the elevator still wasn't moving. We had pressed the call button multiple times, but there was no response. Jake suggested trying to pry the doors open, but of course, that didn't work. Well, he said, looks like we're here for a while. And then I noticed the way he looked at me. Not just a glance. He was studying me, like he was trying to figure out who I was. And to my surprise, I realized that I liked it. Emily, he said quietly, are you afraid of the dark? I wanted to say no, but for some reason I said, a little. He moved closer. Me too. But you know what I've realized? Darkness is like a blank page. You can do anything with it. I laughed. Are you seriously getting all philosophical in a stuck elevator? Why not? He replied. It's not like we're in a rush. And then he took my hand. I wasn't expecting it. His fingers were warm, and I felt something tighten inside me. Emily, he said, let's do something crazy. I looked at him, or at least in his direction, and felt my heart beat faster. Like what? I asked, though I already had a pretty good idea. He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in, and our lips met. It was a gentle but confident kiss, one that made me forget where I was. For a moment, I thought, what the hell am I doing? But then I realized I didn't care, and that's when things got really interesting. So we were kissing. It was weird, thrilling, and unbelievably exciting. I had never done anything like this before. You know, I was always the girl who followed the rules, never late for work, always paid my bills on time, and never ever kissed strangers in elevators. But in that moment, all the rules disappeared. Jake was different. He didn't rush, but at the same time, his touch was confident. It was like he knew exactly what I was feeling without even asking. His hand slid down my back, and I felt goosebumps spread across my skin. Emily, he whispered, are you sure you want this? I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled him closer. And then, bam! The elevator jolted. We froze. The lights flickered but didn't fully come back on. What the hell was that? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Looks like the elevator wanted to remind us that we're still stuck, Jake said with a smirk. We both laughed, but the tension in the air was thick. My heart was pounding, and I wasn't sure if it was from fear or something else. Jake, I said, maybe we should stop? He looked at me, or at least in my direction, and nodded. Of course, if that's what you want. But I didn't want to, and he knew it. We sat in silence for a few minutes, but the tension between us only grew stronger. I could hear his breathing deepen, and I knew he felt the same way. Emily, he finally said, I don't know what this is, but I don't want it to end. I looked at him, or at least where I thought he was, and felt something tighten inside me. Me neither, I whispered, and then he kissed me again. But this time, it wasn't gentle. It was passionate, desperate, like we both knew this might be our last chance. His hand slid under my blouse, and I felt my body respond to him. And that's when things got really interesting. Component placement. I know you've been waiting for the next part, and I'm not going to disappoint you. But before we get to, well, you know what? I need to explain how we even got to this point. Because honestly, even I still can't believe it happened. So, we were kissing. Passionately, desperately, like there was no tomorrow. Jake was confident but not aggressive. It was like he instinctively knew where the line was, and he never crossed it. But at that moment, even I wasn't sure where that line was anymore. Emily, he whispered, we can stop. If you want. I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled him closer, and that's when things got really interesting. His hands moved down my back, sending shivers through my body. He slid off my blouse, and I didn't resist. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about consequences. I was only thinking about how his touch made me feel alive. Jake, I whispered, are we, are we really going to do this? He paused and looked at me. Do you want to stop? I didn't answer. Instead, I kissed him. And that's when we crossed the point of no return. I thought I had hit rock bottom. Turns out, it was deeper than I imagined. You know how it is with rust on an old pickup truck. The paint still holds up on the surface, but if you scratch it just a little, the metal crumbles like dust. That's exactly how it was with us. After our last conversation, I decided I needed time, space, at least the illusion of control. I rented a cheap motel room on the outskirts of town. The view from the window was a parking lot with one crooked palm tree and a dumpster. Poetic, right? But here's the weird part. I thought it would be easier. I thought leaving would make everything clear. Okay, Tom, you're hurt, betrayed, time to move on. Instead, there was just emptiness, like I'd forgotten who I was without her. But then came the real kicker. I got a message from her friend, Lisa, the same Lisa she did yoga with and drank green smoothies with. Lisa wrote, I didn't want to get involved, but you need to know. Emily was seeing one of her followers. They met up a few times. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen like it was a piece of ice melting in my hand. At first, I didn't believe it. Then I laughed. You know, that kind of nervous laugh when you don't know whether to cry or scream. And then anger, the kind that made me want to smash my phone against the wall. I drove back home, just barged into the apartment, not caring what she was doing. She was in the kitchen, slicing a tomato like nothing had happened. I stormed in like a hurricane. Who is he? I asked. No greetings, no small talk. She froze, the knife in her hand. Tom, what are you talking about? Talking? Lisa told me everything. So who is he, Emily? Just another follower? Or is he special now? And you know what she did? She sat down and cried. Not hysterically, quietly, almost calmly. It was a mistake, she said through tears. I was lost. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt you. A phrase they must hand out at the betrayal store on your way out. I left again, but this time, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I did. I could have yelled. I could have accused. But why? She'd already said everything without words. Now I'm sitting in this dingy motel room, drinking cheap whiskey from a plastic cup, thinking, we always think cheating is about the bedroom, but really, it's about the cracks. The rust beneath the paint you don't notice until the whole thing falls apart. I thought I needed time to figure things out. Turns out I needed to reach a point where there was nothing left to figure out. A week had passed since I left. At first, I just existed, lived on autopilot, woke up, ate, tried not to think, failed, slept again. You know what the worst part is? You can leave a person, but you can't leave the thoughts. They sit with you, like an annoying hitchhiker you never invited. On the third day of silence, she texted, we need to talk. And I went, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to put an end to this, not leave it hanging like a rotten thread in my mind. When I walked into the apartment, everything looked the same as always. The same couch, the same photos on the wall, where we're smiling like a yogurt commercial couple. Only now, it all felt so fake, I wanted to tear them down and throw them out. She was sitting at the table, hands clasped, like she was holding herself together. Tom, I don't know how to start, she said quietly. Start with the truth. No filters. No, it was complicated. Just say it. She took a deep breath. It started when I felt like I was losing myself. Sounds stupid, I know. I wanted to feel like I could control something in my life. OnlyFans seemed harmless. And then he showed up. We started talking. It was exciting. He saw something in me that I hadn't seen in myself for a long time. Not Tom's wife, but just me. I stayed silent, listened. Every word felt like a punch to the gut. But I listened. And what? I asked when she paused. Was he better than me? More interesting? Or just new? She lowered her head. It wasn't about him. It was about me. I was looking for what I'd lost. The irony, right? She was looking for herself by destroying us. Like if you lose your keys, you burn down the house to make it easier to search. I looked at her, at the woman I'd spent 6 years with, and I realized one simple thing. I don't hate her. I'm just tired of her. Of the lies, of trying to save something that's already drowned. I'm filing for divorce, I said calmly. No yelling, no drama. She nodded, didn't cry, didn't beg, just nodded. And that's how our story ended. Not with a bang, not with a tragedy, just a quiet the end, like in a bad movie. I walked out of the apartment, got in my car, and for the first time in a long time, I felt emptiness. But it wasn't the same emptiness that had been haunting me. This was the kind of emptiness that leaves room for something new.